No role plays, just real. Chris and Lorenzo share 4 decades of combined experience to help you become a more effective leader.
We've never really, as a workforce, spent a lot of time on making sure we're developing good leaders.
We'll be able to share stories, experience, mistakes, failures, successes.
This is Hacking Your Leadership.
Welcome to Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lorenzo.
And Lorenzo, on this episode, we're going to be talking about part 2 of our 5-part series in our Leader of Leaders series. If you've not listened to our episode from last Monday, we talked about the first one of our 5-part series of our acronym S.P.A.C.E, S-P.A.C.E, the S being setting clear expectations. And on this episode, we're going to be talking about the P in SPACE, which is personalize the support. And again, if you have any questions or follow-ups from this episode, then send us a DM on Instagram and we will answer them during our Thoughtful Thursday for the same week. We noticed that a lot of really great feedback and DMs coming in, and we addressed as many of those as we could on our Thoughtful Thursday for last week. We're going to do the exact same thing for the next 4 weeks going forward, is kind of following up on each element of this when it comes to specific questions from our listeners. And so when I think about personalizing the support, I think about kind of in no clear terms, just meeting our employees where they are. Don't just assume that you might have 10 people reporting to you and you're the same leader for all of them, and so you're going to treat them all the same way. Some people need different things, and you need to be able to meet them where they are. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I agree. It seems so obvious on the surface in regards to just kind of like personalizing the way in which you work through your leaders. But especially when you're a leader of leaders, it's even more important, because I think understanding just how people are motivated, how they're inspired, how they do the work, how they like to communicate. Like, it's such an important aspect to make sure that you're not leaving any type of gray area or ambiguity in whether or not somebody is getting the direction they need or the support that they need in the work that they're doing. And so I think that it's such a big thing. And I think that as leaders, we also tend to make a lot of assumptions, because it can be really easy as you gain more tenure and experience in leadership, that you start to see the way that people approach work, or the way that they measure their work, the way that they show up for work, and you start to kind of collect them into different buckets of similar personality types or similar types of people or leaders that you worked with in the past. And then you start to make these assumptions around, well, if they approach the work this way, then this is actually what probably motivates them. And by making those assumptions, that can be very demotivating sometimes. And I think it's just something that that I think most leaders, again, will it work most of the time? Sure. But if you're really trying to dial in your leadership and make sure that you're allowing people to bring their best to work, then you have to be really, really, clear on exactly what are those unique differences that each of you leaders have.
I agree with that. I think it's human nature to make assumptions. It's not human nature to act on them. We can control our actions. We can't control our thoughts. And if I'm a leader and I've seen a particular action out of several people in the past, and it's coming from the same place, when I see it again, I'm going to assume it's coming from the same place. So the solution isn't to stop making assumptions or kind of put down all that baggage that you have and take each person with a fresh set of eyes. Yeah, I get it. You can't be a human being and do that. What you can do, however, is have the conversation with the person. What you can do is bring up to them what you're seeing, and don't tell them your assumptions. Don't say, hey, I've seen this before and this means this. Forget that. Again, you can control what you say. You don't want to say that to people, but you can bring up what their actual actions are and what you're seeing, and then offer whatever support that you can and ask them what support that they need. That mitigates the potential of you jumping to conclusions, because I believe truly that most people will rise to the occasion. And so a great example I can think of this is one of my favorite books of all time, The Art of Possibility, by Ben Zander. You should definitely read it. He talks about the idea of giving somebody an A, and that they will rise to it. He talks about in the classes he teaches, he starts out at the beginning of the semester giving everybody an A grade and said, you have your A, all you can do is lose it. So you don't have to earn the A, you just have to not lose the A and more people end up getting it because they feel like they have to rise to the occasion. This is the exact same thing. And I'll tell you a perfect example. There was an employee that was reporting to me once who was having a really hard time doing something that was pretty basic. And it was rooted in a couple of things, either just forgetting or not believing it was important. It was just the repeated thing over and over and over again. And instead of going to this employee and saying, I need you to make sure you do this every single time, instead I went to them and I said, hey, I don't want to micromanage this. I know I'm an adult, you're an adult. You're a talented individual. I don't want to come off like I'm reminding you to do something every day if you believe that you can do it on your own. But I am willing to help you do it if you need the help. So instead of saying, like, assuming that it's my responsibility to just harp on them every time, I put it in their court. I said, do you want me to, take that burden off of you of remembering to do this? And I'll remind you every single time. And I have no problem doing that. I just don't want you to feel like, oh, here comes Chris reminding me again, if you have the ability to do it on your own. So you tell me what support you need. And they said, no, I don't need you to remind me. I can do it. And then now it's not just me getting them to do it every time. It's them kind of self-selecting, I can do this. And they did it. They did it because they rose to the occasion. Or if they weren't able to rise to the occasion and I had to start coming in and reminding them all the time, at the very least, they couldn't just say, stop doing this, I can do it on my own. They'd have to say, well, yeah, I thought I could do it on my own, but I guess I can't. That lands differently than just assuming that a person can't perform or can't meet the expectations of a role.
Yeah, I think it's a great example and a reminder that I think when you're a leader of leaders, like there are definitely aspects of the job where you're going to have to be kind of general, and you're going to have to approach maybe communication or expectations or something from a kind of a group standpoint. So you may send an email to everyone to say, like, hey, here's the upcoming strategy, or here's what's going on, or I need to have this by this time and this deadline. And you may have to approach the work in kind of these generality elements, but knowing and understanding each individual leader and knowing that some of them are going to respond within 2 minutes because like they just like to be responsive and they're constantly checking their email, versus others who say, hey, I check my email in the morning and then I check it again in the evening because I'm working throughout the day, and if it's important, Lorenzo will text me, right? If it's urgent, he'll call me. So like if you don't understand and know that individuals need different types of either follow-up or support, then it can cause there to be some unnecessary friction throughout you and the team, or even leaders amongst themselves. And so I think it's such an important part to what I appreciate you saying is like letting them know, hey, here's the expectation. How do you want me to play in this space? What do you need for me to make sure that this is getting done consistently? And I think that allows the leader to be a part of the dialogue, and then also have the time to discuss, what may or may not be needed from a support standpoint. Because again, we're talking in context of leaders. So there's already this element of self-accountability, self-responsibility, self-awareness of the leader themselves, being able to know how they need to get things done or how they need to prioritize. But even then, it is important that you are even hyper aware of those types of things if you're looking to get the best out of all of your leaders, and if you're not blinded by this belief that like, well, consistency is me having to communicate exactly the same way with every single person, or it's me like I think people want consistency of outcome, not necessarily consistency of how you help people get the work done or how you support them, and knowing that you may have leaders in different places, of those that are highly competent and highly tenured and are capable of just hearing you say, hey, can we get this done by this time? They hear it once, it's done. It might as well be completed already, versus maybe newer leaders who need some time to digest, who may have more questions, who may be looking for an example of good. So knowing where your leaders are is what really allows you to personalize the level of support that you give to them.
Right. Because there is no option of it doesn't get done, right? Like the expectation is the expectation, the requirement is the requirement, but how those things are laid out to your employees will absolutely impact their level of engagement and their level of buy-in to whatever that process is. And so the different reasons why a person may be able to make the required change or accomplish the required task, they might be they might not even know they had to get it done. The example you gave of you sent out an email and it's now 3 hours later and this person doesn't even know about it. Well, yeah, maybe they don't check email during the day. So like assuming that they should have done something when they weren't even aware they had to do it is a problem. There are also people who are unable to do it, right? So they got the email, they read it, and they're stewing in it. They're going, oh my gosh, I don't know how to do this, but I don't want to reach out, or I don't want to say that I don't know how to do this. I need to make sure that I don't come off looking like I don't know what I'm doing or that I shouldn't be in this role, but I really don't know how to do this. And then there's the people who are just, they're unwilling. They got the email and they're like, I'm not doing that. Like nope, that's not me. And each of those people will have the exact same result. It won't get done, right? But because the reason it won't get done is completely different for all three of them, you approaching all three of them is, hey, how come none of you were aware of this? That's wrong for two of them, right? Or I'm not going to tolerate this lack of engagement. I laid this out. You know what the expectation is. Why are you all unwilling to do this? That's also wrong for two of them, right? So you approaching the follow-up or the expectation or laying out what the communication is of how you're going to get this done, whatever this is, it's already inherently wrong if it's not tailored to one person. So outcomes, absolutely identical for everybody, right? If they're on a team or if they have the same role, that email that goes to everybody that lays out what the change is needed or the strategy or the outcomes, that can go to everybody because it should be the same for everybody. But how you help people get there absolutely has to be custom tailored, and it shows a level of empathy if you can do this the right way by making sure your people understand that you're not placating them and you're not trying to you're not assuming that they don't know how to do it. You're not assuming they're unwilling to do it, and you're not assuming they're unable to do it. You're just assuming that every person needs a different level of support, and it's your job to offer whatever support you can so that they have no one to blame but themselves, really, when it doesn't get done, but that they also feel fully supported in the endeavor should they decide that they are willing, able, and aware.
Yeah, and I can tell you, I've personally had that happen to me, as an assistant manager, as a part of a larger team, where having a leader where they were really kind of stuck on, it was their way of doing everything. It was their way of communication. It was their way of follow-up. It was their way of, how they would, maybe go to a leader and give them the entire, here's all the things that need to happen. And sometimes that was me, and sometimes it was a different leader. But it was very much here's the list of things that need to get done today and tomorrow. And then I'm going to check up on these, in the day or two, or whatever the case is. And it was just like boom, boom, boom. There's a ton of information. There's a lot of things that were happening within the dialogue, a lot of expectations being set, some of them specific, some of them a little too general. And if you weren't good at capturing most of all of that very, very quickly and then getting that to people, there are going to be things that you missed. And this person was not the type of leader that would send that giant list in an email, or print it out, or say, here's my checklist of things to get done, because they didn't want to be perceived as a checkbox leader. But they would just ramble on with all this type of stuff, and that would cause a lot of frustration and confusion. And then it was like, if I was the messenger having to tell all the other leaders, my peer group, what they have to go do, that could cause an issue or problem or a rub. If it was somebody else trying to tell me what I was supposed to go do, I'm always like, well, is that really what I'm supposed to do, or how I'm supposed to do it? Or is that how you would like me to do it? And also, what's on this list for you, right? So it was like, there was just this constant ongoing battle and issue amongst each other, because our leader was not super clear in the expectation. Our leader was not attuned to each of us individually and how we liked to get information, and how we prioritized the work, and how we worked under pressure, like who was the right person for the job specifically versus who was the person they just wanted to do the job. So like there was just a lot of that going on, and I did not feel that any of the work was personalized to either my strengths and or the way in which I wanted to be led or inspired or mentored. So it became very difficult to do great work because so much of the work that was being asked was just not, set up in such a way that made it easy for me to get it done.
That reminds me of, there's a leader that I reported to a while ago, and there was something that she used to say that I just love, and I've taken it with me for years now, and I think I've said it on the podcast a couple times. One of the things she used to say are, people are messy. And what she means basically is that people don't act or respond like the textbook says they're going to. And, I've been in human resources in that world for a long time. And there are some human resource leaders who they couldn't really articulate what the book says or what the textbook says about how people are going to act or react, but they're really good at actually knowing how they're going to. They just can't necessarily articulate it. Then there are those leaders who are just really good at teaching it. They're really good at knowing what the textbook says or how people react. But people is a group. A person is where the mess comes in. So an individual person is not going to act like the textbook says, even if as a whole, in general, people are going to act like the textbook says. You'll be the leader who has people reporting to them where only a certain percentage of them are going to act like the textbook says, and the rest of them are going to act like they act, because everybody is a result of all the experiences they've had. And so you as a leader, you need to really love the process of working through that messiness. You need to love the process of meeting people where they are and being able to say, I'm approaching this from the standpoint of I can't get in my own head and believe I know something already. I just need to know what the outcomes are. I need to know what needs to get done. And now I'm working with an individual that's different completely from the person sitting next to them. And so my level of support has to be personalized, because at the very least, that will ensure the highest likelihood that the result gets there. Some leaders, I think, get in their own head and they start thinking, this should be able to be done. You should be able to do this without this level of support. If you're unable to do this without this level of support, then why are you in this role to begin with? Well, I don't know. Did you hire them into that role? If you did, maybe you hired the wrong person, right? But if you didn't, then you need to figure out very quickly whether or not they are the right person for the job or they're not. And if the role if the role has expectations with it that should come with at least some level of accomplishment that doesn't need that level of support, just because there's not enough time, there's not enough bandwidth to be able to walk through something with somebody and hold their hand at every step of the way, then you could have the wrong person. But a lot of times, again, people will rise to the occasion. And so if you can make them feel like it's a safe place where they can talk about the things that they're having trouble with or struggling with without the fear of you thinking, oh, you're gone now, I'm going to replace you, they're more likely to be able to get there and get out of their own head and get the job done. At the very least, you'll figure out whether or not you have the right person. Going into it stuck in your own head in this circular kind of logic of, nope, I'm gonna hold to what the expectation should be and not give them the support they need, not give them the recognition that they want because I don't think it's deserved, not give them the praise for something mundane or something little because I don't think you should get praise for something mundane and little. You get praise for going above and beyond. It's like, no, if they want praise for something little, you give them praise for something little, because what you will get is a repetition of the thing that they are good at, because that's what their driving force is. Whatever they need to get there is it's your job as a leader to do that within the confines of the construct of what the company gives you to do, what those tools are. But you shouldn't throw out tools that you have simply because you have some kind of a block of using them. That's terrible leadership.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to this episode's 1 Minute Hack. But first, a few words from our sponsors.
The 1 Minute Hack.
All right, for this episode's 1 Minute Hack, here's what I want you to do. The next time that you are tasked with disseminating something to your team, a new strategy, a new process, something that they have to execute on, I want you to start with whatever the communication is that is generalized to the entire group, whether that's an email or a message board or whatever it is, and send it out to everybody in the context of the absolute objective part of it. So nothing that is different for each person. This is what the requirement is. This is where we have to land. This is what the results have to be. Lay that out in very clear terms. And then in that communication, that email or whatever it is you're sending out, I want you to hold yourself accountable by saying in that email, I'm going to follow up with each of you individually, and we'll go over what my level of engagement or support is going to be in this to make sure that everybody is able to get their work done. What that does is two things. One, by telling everybody on your team that you're going to be following up with everybody individually, no one's going to feel singled out. No one's going to feel like, oh, my leader pulled me aside because they think I need more support than everybody else. It's not more support, it's different support. And so you say that to everybody going up front, and they don't come into those interactions with any apprehension or thinking they're going to be singled out. And two, it allows you to meet that person where they are from that level of support, and the support you're giving to their peers is none of their business because it's individualized and it's different for each person. So hold yourself accountable to that. Put out the objectives to everybody, and then put out the support individually, one-on-one, in person with each of your people. You will get people who will at least approach whatever that objective or that strategy is with without the baggage of feeling like I hope I can rise to my leader's standards, and instead what they're doing is they're rising to the company standards.
Yeah, I think it's a great woman in hack, and in the context of the acronym of SPACE, like to be able to give people space means that you're allowing it, but you're also creating it. And I think that when you have that level of personalization when it comes to how you're supporting people, and they're clear about it and you're clear about it, that makes that ability to create space a lot easier. And a lot more, just a lot more fun and inspiring and empowering than when you're creating space with people where they don't know, or there's questions, or I'm not sure, or this style's not working for me, and then that space really turns into anxiety. So I like the woman at hack, and I think that that's really the secret sauce of this idea. It's just the level of dialogue and specificity in clarifying what are the expectations, and then for that person, how does it work best for them to get the work done?
Yeah, it does no good if you say, hey, here's the expectations. Come to me if you need any support in this. That's the available but not forced. It needs to be forced. The space can't just be something your people seek out. The space has to be something you force them into, so that so that you can't ever say that they didn't have the opportunity to say something, or that you don't have to worry about them kind of holding back for fear that requesting the space or taking advantage of it somehow reflects negatively on them.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to the end of this episode. This is Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Lorenzo.
And I'm Chris.
And we'll talk to you all next time.